Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello, hello.
That was actually not that bad. Honestly, your intros recently have been so terrible that was a step up. So this is our horror movie podcast. We talk about horror films. Every week we get together, we've watched a movie, we talk about it. And this episode is actually one of our Patreon vote winners. This was originally meant to be an October episode, but because there's some paternity leave coming up, things got moved around a little bit. But regardless, we're here today to talk about Black Sunday, aka The Mask of Satan, aka a bunch of other titles, because it's one of those movies that have got like 10 titles, but those are the two main ones that people know it by. The Mario Bava film, it was a 1960s themed vote, and this was the winner. So I guess the first thing I should ask before we go any further with this is, which cut of this did you watch?
I don't know. I watched it on Tubi, so whatever version on Tubi was.
Did the title say Black Sunday?
I actually no. I think it said Mask of Satan.
Right, and was it about 87 minutes or?
Yes.
Well, okay, so you watched the original Mask of Satan cut then.
Okay.
Because Black Sunday is the shorter American cut that came out, which it does remove some of the violence, I think, or at least some of the more gratuitous moments. So naturally, because I actually forgot there was more than one cut. I put in, because I've got the Blu-ray for this, I put the Blu-ray in. I got to the menu and it was like, hey, which cut do you want? I was like, oh shit, I don't know. And I had to quickly Google. I was like, what do I watch? What's the best one?
Is the other cut, is it about like a minute 15?
A minute 15?
Or not a minute, an hour and 15 minutes.
I think it's an hour 19.
Okay, maybe that was the one I watched, because I do remember it being kind of short. Yeah, I don't. Geez, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I mean, I am pretty sure that I did think the title was different when it came up, because that did stand out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, that's one of those movies that it's called something else, but.
Yeah, so, but anyway, either way, Black Sunday, The Mask of Satan, whatever title we're going with, that's what we're going to talk about. We'll start spoiler-free, of course. We'll give you warning before we go into the spoilers, and here we go. Had you seen this before, Tim?
You know what? It's funny. I thought that I did, but then I quickly realized that, I think I was thinking of Black Sabbath, which I have seen, but no, I never seen this one before.
I had, but it had been a long time. Like, I have the Blu-ray, but I didn't see it on Blu-ray. Like, I've never watched my Blu-ray copy. I watched it on the old Anchor Bay DVD Bava box set from a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah, a long time ago. So I'd basically forgotten a lot of it. I remembered a couple of key visuals, but other than that, like, it kind of faded in my mind.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I've seen that many Bava. I'm an Argento guy. So seen plenty of him. Seen decent amount of Fulci. But yeah, Bava, I don't think I've seen a ton of.
Interesting. Maybe we'll have to have a Bava. There's no months beginning with B. God damn it. A Bava buffet. There you go.
Sure.
We'll have a Bava buffet. So the basic gist of it is that a woman who is condemned as a witch 200 years ago is burned at the stake, but there's a curse. She's got this Mask of Satan is placed on her, and 200 years later, which is not present day, it's still set in the past. Even at this point, it's still carts and horses and all sorts, and she's basically trying to come back, and does so through kind of making someone a vampire. Like, is she herself a vampire? I'm not entirely sure, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
This does pop up in some like best of vampire lists, and every time I see it, I'm like, was this a vampire movie? I can't remember. And then I watched it again, and I'm like, oh, I guess it kind of is.
Yeah, it's very tough to say. I wouldn't necessarily call it a vampire movie, although it does seem to take like from vampire lore a little bit. But I mean, I guess I wouldn't argue too hard against it.
Yeah. So yeah, Mario Bava. I think this is the first Bava movie we've reviewed, which is kind of insane. We haven't done a whole lot of Argento or Bava, or even Fulci. I think we've done one or two, but not a lot. With,
I mean, what do we have against the Italians?
I don't know.
That's a question people ask.
We're gonna have to do some sort of Italian season or something and fire through some Italian movies. But yeah, so I guess I'll ask the question. What did you think of Black Sunday, aka The Mask of Satan?
I liked it for the most part. I would be lying if I said there weren't parts that I thought dragged a little bit, even though it is, a pretty short movie. There were definitely times that I would maybe start to feel like my mind wandering a little bit. But I think the thing that always kind of brings you back, though, is just how visually striking the movie is. Because I think this is absolutely a beautiful movie. Like, it's in black and white, and it has this very like dark gothic feel. So like, all these scenes like with these like kind of torture devices, like with these spiked masks, or like when they're in like tombs and crypts, and like it kind of has this like very like kind of dark gothic feel. Like I think that's always like is very entertaining and visually pleasing to look at. So I would say overall I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to just kind of echo the sentiment there that I like the movie. The plot's kind of just fine, and it feels like it could be the plot of any like Hammer movie, or even any classical horror movie that came out before then. What separates it is that there's a couple of moments of actual like violence with blood, which typically older films with these types of plot wouldn't have because they were a bit more tame. But then the main thing is just how gorgeous the film is, and it's like those early scenes when they're first in kind of the crypt that the witch's body's in, and they're just walking slowly towards, and the camera's going past the pillars and the cobwebs and all that. It just looks stunning, and I do think obviously being black and white maybe helps some sets that otherwise might not look that great. Possibly these sets wouldn't look as impressive in color, but it is notable that this movie looks much better than, say, like the original Dracula, for example. And I love, the original Dracula, but this movie is stunning to look at. The direction is what really sets it apart. The characters in the story are just kind of whatever. If anything, it's a bit, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's a bit overly back and forth when it should be maybe simpler. But the technical qualities are stunning. It plays with like darkness and shadows. Again, in a way that I don't think you saw as much before, even in all the old black and white movies. Obviously, there's some big examples, but even the old horror movies, I feel like, don't use them in the way that this movie does, where there'll be scenes where someone's just lying in a coffin, or there's like a face in the darkness, and it has this eerie look to it.
And like you said, like it's not like, especially by today's standards, it's not like the movie is super gory or anything, but just the fact that like, there is some actual like like gore and violence and stuff in it. I feel like that's something that you never ever see like in these older movies. So even like the little bit that's there is kind of like very surprising and jarring.
Yeah, just seeing blood of any kind, and because again the plot feels like it could be from the 30s or 40s, and it's worth mentioning this is 1960. This came out the same year as Psycho, and Psycho obviously was pushing boundaries in other ways. But this definitely feels like it's doing a classic Hollywood-style horror movie, but it's an Italian film, so they're getting away with doing other things that Hollywood wouldn't let them do. And that's kind of exciting. It's kind of fun because of that. It's matching like, almost different eras in one.
Yeah, and like you said, like, they had to heavily edit it, and then, like, was it banned from, like, some places for a time?
It was banned in the UK until 1968, so not that long, relatively speaking, but...
So it wasn't like a Video Nasty?
No, that came because there was no videos yet.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
No Video Nasty. Clearly, the movie's clearly actually even tamed by the 80s standards because time's moved on. But it's definitely a little bit ahead of its time in terms of what the US system was doing. Although, again, Psycho was starting to push things forward. I mean, fast forward another decade or so, and you've got Texas Chainsaw, so things are obviously going to change very soon. But it's kind of fascinating place in history. And Bava himself would go on to do movies that essentially would inspire slasher films and stuff like that. So It's interesting looking at his filmography and seeing kind of this more slow-paced thriller that he did. I mean, I like Bava a lot, but this is definitely, and I think this is definitely one of his strong films, but not his strongest. There's definitely a few other ones that I like more than this, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point.
I'll look up like what he did, see if I've actually seen.
The Girl Who Knew Too Much, Black Sabbath.
So Black Sabbath.
Bay of Blood's one. The Blood and Black Lace, I think, is another one.
A lot of stuff. It looks like a lot of stuff. Like obviously I've heard of, but not much. I think I actually have seen. So I have to go ahead and correct that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I guess Danger Diablique is probably the big one.
That's not a horror movie though. I don't think that's.
Yeah.
But Bava, much like Fulci, did a lot of other stuff. Like Fulci's got a movie called Robot Jox, which is kind of like a precursor to Pacific Rim, that was made in like 1991, which I like want to see with every fiber of my being.
Planet of the Vampires, I've really wanted to see for a while.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So obviously he's one of those big Italian directors. We talk about Fulci and Argento, and he's kind of the we were joking. And another thing we recorded today about the Triforce of modern horror, I think it was the news, and those three are legitimately the Triforce of Italian horror directors of the era of the 60s through to the 80s, more or less.
Oh sure,
yeah. So,
and I guess the Ganon, aka like the bad guy opposing him, would be the director of Troll 2.
I would have maybe said Bruno Mattei, but yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying.
I think Claudio something.
Claudio Fergazio or something like that. Yeah. Maybe I'm just saying something generically Italian sounding, but yeah.
Yeah. But I just think I always think of him because I think he, I want to say he took over like one of the zombie movies that, is it maybe like Zombie like 4 or 5 or something? Maybe like was one of the last things Fulci was doing, and then I think he might have taken over. I could be wrong about that, but
yeah, Fulci did obviously Zombie 2, but he also did Zombie 3. I don't know how involved he was with 4, so maybe 4 is the one you're talking about. I don't know.
Maybe.
What a downgrade.
Yeah.
Not that everything Fulci made was gold, because it wasn't. They had ups and downs. Like Bava had ups and downs. Argento, I think, has ups and downs.
Big time.
But
I love Argento, but some of those movies.
Yeah, Argento and Wes Craven have a lot in common. They both have their big ups and downs.
Yeah, actually.
Because Craven has some stinkers in his repertoire.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, he's talking about a mixed bag. Like he has made some of my favorite movies and some of my least favorite.
This. I wonder, because he doesn't strike me as someone who phones it in, which makes me think like. What about this? What about Vampire in Brooklyn? Was he seriously thinking was good when he was making it?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. But, so yeah, I mean, we'll get into the plot properly in a minute. I am a little concerned. This may be actually a shorter episode of this show, because I feel like the plot's so by the numbers and the characters are so by the numbers that what makes this movie stand out is the visuals, and there's only so much we can really do and talk about when it comes to the visuals. Sure. Really, outside of maybe pointing out a couple of key shots, and I've already mentioned a couple of them. So, so don't be surprised if it's a shorter one.
Go out and watch it, you heathens.
Go be cultured.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, it's on Tubi for free.
It is, yeah, it's on Tubi. Or if you have the Arrow Blu-ray like I do, you can enjoy it in style. Has both cuts, has extras. No? Okay. I tried. I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers at the time of recording, so thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palisades, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are all $20 or more on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, but you can of course go over there and support us for as little as $1 per month and get a bonus episode of streams every month. Although admittedly not right now, because Tim's about to go on paternity leave, but usually you get a bonus episode every month. There's a back catalogue of like 27, 28 movies you can go check out, and there's bonuses from other shows. And of course, if you want to support us for free, you can hit the like button, and that helps us out a lot by the YouTube algorithm taking that information and spitting us out to more people, and that is a huge help always. So thank you very much to everyone who supports us in any and every way. So thank you all. Okay. Do you have something to add there, Tim? I thought you were going to say something.
Yeehaw.
That's not what I was expecting, but okay. What about this movie made you go cowboy? You madman. So, yeah, I love the opening scene of this movie. I don't know about you. So, full spoilers. Yeah. Full spoilers, by the way. We're in full spoilers.
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the movie, I feel this way, but I mean, especially like this opening scene, like to me, it kind of like feels like I'm reading a Hellboy comic. Like, just the... Like, because, you know, especially like the Mignola stuff, which is like very ink heavy. There's lots of like blacks and shadows and yeah, like you were saying before, yes, like black and white movie, and it really plays like with like the darkness and the lights and you know, that mixed with like again this kind of, you know, like it's not like that far ago, but it does have like a very medieval kind of feel to it. That it just reminds me of like that gothic kind of torture and supernatural witchy kind of stuff that is in a lot of things I like Hellboy.
Yeah, I like it because you have this narration kind of explaining loosely what's going on, and we've got this woman being like, you know, burnt at the stake, but before they do it though, they put this mask that has spikes on the inside in front of her face, and then this big, you know, executioner comes with a hammer, a big mallet, and just hits it into her face. And you know, you see it go, you know, you don't see it obviously because it's covering her face, but you see it look like it goes into her face, and then you just see blood pouring out the eye holes and down the side, and it's like, it actually feels really brutal. I think it's the most brutal moment in the whole movie. Like this opening has totally. this really violent like death of this person. And one thing that's interesting is it doesn't do anything where it like reveals that she was like innocent and they burned her as a witch, so it's like a revenge thing. No, I mean the movie kind of plays it as no, she had a pact with Satan, and like
hell yeah,
you know, she is evil and she's going to come back and try and do it again. But we jump to 100 years later, and our two of our main characters are a doctor and his like a apprentice, and they're riding, and they have to like pay off the coachman like extra because they're going to be late, and they want to get to this inn so that they can get to their meeting in, I think it's Moscow, like the next day or something. And he has to pay him off because the coachman won't drive through like the shortcut in the woods because he's scared. And the guy's like, "What, are you really scared of the witch?" It's like, so clearly there's like a story. There's like a myth, you know, there's a myth of like the witch in the woods and all the rest. But they end up breaking down, and they go and they wander in the crypt because they're curious, and all this stuff is wonderful. But some of my favorite stuff here is just the slow build of them finding what they're finding in this crypt and seeing the skeleton of the woman. And obviously they start touching things and reading things, which is never a good. I mean, I know Evil Dead's not come out yet, but don't read things you find in spooky crypts.
Yeah, especially not allowed. Like that's the keep it in your head.
Yeah. The key thing here though is that the main doctor like gets a cut in his hand, and we see the blood drip onto the skeleton, which presumably is what starts the coming of her. As
yeah, because there's like this bat flying around their heads that he ends up smashing, which kind of gives way to the skeleton or the corpse of the witch. And again, like it all looks like like really good. Like even the like the rubber bats that we see all the time, which are usually like generally pretty cheesy, but like even here, like I think it looked pretty good, had some charm to it.
Yeah. But they move on. They go further. But when they come outside, they meet. Because I actually got confused here, because it's the same actress obviously playing the role as the witch, and they meet this show, and I thought this was just like immediately the ghost of the witch that like risen, but it's actually not. It's the princess who lives nearby. She was it Tachia?
I don't think I'm gonna remember any of the names.
Kachia was her name. And she basically, and the young doctor, the apprentice, is like he's immediately love struck. He's just like, oh, you're so beautiful. And then they're riding away.
Excuse me, princess.
Well, excuse me, princess. But they're riding away, and he's just like sitting there like awestruck, and the older guy's like, all in love already, Sonny Jim. Is that what you're doing? But the witch raises like her old like apprentice or like servant dude, whatever, and he and notably this is the same actor as the main doctor, which is what is it? No, it's not. No, it's not. I just thought it was. They look very similar. But you have you have Yavutic. You have Igor Yavutic. Like, basically, the guy that she was in cahoots with 200 years ago rises from the dead, and the prince that Katja's father becomes ill, and basically he's ill just kind of randomly, but the task of the servant is to go and fetch the doctor, and he turns him into a vampire by biting him. So then the doctor is let into the house because they've sent for a doctor, because Katja knows 2 doctors are staying at the inn. So he shows up, but it's not the guy they sent, the boy, the stable boy or whoever it was they sent to go get the doctors. He turns up dead later in the lake, and it's the main doctor was fetched by this evil henchman who's undead, and he comes in, and instead, of course, of saving the prince, he kills him. And when they look upon his dead body later, they find holes in his neck, which is like, oh yeah, this is kind of a vampire movie.
Yeah.
Kind of. So what's weird though is that, like, I don't think the witch herself ever feels like a vampire, or it feels like she plays by vampire rules, especially since they seem to be killed by getting stabbed in the eye.
Yeah. Like, there is definitely, like, some stuff, like, they seem to have an aversion to crosses. But,
yes, that's there, for sure.
Yeah, like, I guess, like, I mean, you could say, though, like, if she is a satanic witch, maybe just any representation of God is going to do that to her or whatever. But, I mean, still, it's like, yeah, you can't really help but, feel vampire. And then, like, and essentially just the idea of, yeah, like, this 100-year-old, corpse basically being brought back to life because blood spilled on it, and then essentially its goal is to kind of drain like life force from this woman. It's like, all right, yeah, it is, without saying anything about vampires, it is very vampire like, but it's it's a little strange.
Yeah, so I mean they never use the word vampire though, right?
No,
I don't think they ever do.
No, I mean, I think they mention like witch and stuff, but yeah.
Because there are, I think there's definitely alternate titles that have like vampire in the title. So clearly they did, when they were promoting the movie, some territories did use it and acknowledge that there was vampire stuff in it. But yeah, it's interesting. But some of the best stuff here though is like the secret passageway stuff, where like there's a scene where the henchman and the doctor, who is now like evil and like a vampire, they come out of this like secret passageway in the fireplace, and they're just walking out of the darkness, and it's one of those moments where the shot's just so beautiful and like eerie, to the point where it almost feels a little bit outdated when we cut to the younger doctor, and he's talking about how much he's in love with Katja, and how bewildered he is by her looks, because he obviously like wonders where the older doctor is, and goes to the residence in the morning to try and find him. And they're all confused because the dad's dead and they can't find the older doctor. He does appear at one point and just kind of acts weird, and then runs off when he gets confronted with the cross, and kills the dogs on the way out. And it's like, they don't know where he went. It turns out it's because he snuck into the secret passageway behind the fireplace, but which they find later and start exploring all the caverns and crevices and things behind the walls. It's a whole system. Well, because I think it leads all the way down to the crypt, right? Like, I'm pretty sure they get all the way down there from the secret passageways eventually.
I think what you're getting at here is we need a Black Sunday survival horror game.
Yes. I'm surprised there was no boulders chasing them down the the caves.
Yeah.
No, that's a fun idea. Because the ultimate thing builds up to is that with each death that happens, the skeleton of the witch is starting to like become more and more alive again, and we see like the flesh coming back. There's actually a really great visual at one point. I think it's after the first murder, or maybe the murder of the prince, where you see like her eyes sort of glow and come back in the eye sockets. It's a really great visual.
It actually kind of reminded me of, and I was curious if he might have been inspired by this, but actually reminded me of Hellraiser a little bit, like, you know, both in terms of like, okay, it's like, you know, a drop of blood that brings her back, and then
oh sure, yeah, I can see
yeah,
that.
the idea of it's like slowly regaining its, you know, body and stuff.
Of course, when you say he, you mean Clive Barker was inspired by this, not that this was inspired by Hellraiser.
Right.
Which was 27 years later. Yeah. No, I can see what you're talking about, actually. And it wouldn't surprise me if Clive Barker's a fan. I mean, it seems like it would be up his alley.
For sure.
Yeah, I get that. So, and we have this thing where eventually the young doctor comes down after like wandering the caves, and like he has some near falls and whatnot with the henchmen. But when they get down, because he sees how to kill one of these things, because there's the other character who knows what the vampires are, and he kind of like, they go to the grave of the henchman and like, okay, this is how we kill one of them, and we have to like make sure he's not there, and then he sees him stab him in the eye, so he knows what to do. He knows how to take one of these things out, and he gets to the crypt, and he thinks he's talking to Katya, but this is actually the witch who's now switched places. And I actually didn't get immediately that Katya was supposed to already be dead. It wasn't until afterwards where he was like over with the other guy, and he was kind of like, oh, why did Katya have to die? How will I ever get over this? You met her yesterday, dude. Right? Seriously. Calm yourself. But there's a whole thing where, you know, he sees her lying on the crypt, on the you know, on the coffin, and he's like, okay, I have to kill her, and I know how to do it, so I'm going to stab her in the eye with this. Right? He like breaks a candlestick in half, and he's going to do it. But then he sees that she's wearing a crucifix or a cross, and he realizes that this is not her, that who he's actually been talking to is the witch. And he turns around and he's like, oh no, it's you. So, you know. But luckily for him, there's an entire... The town has formed a lynch mob to come and get her. So we actually get her being burned at the stake again at the end. And it's as he's watching this that he's crying his eyes. He's like, oh my god, how will I ever get over my love? I fell in love with Katya. Katya, my love. That's just one of these old movie tropes of like people falling in love and wanting to get married within like 24 hours. It just boggles my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming people probably, you know, you have shorter lifespans back then. You don't really have many different ways to meet people. You probably moved a little faster, but yeah, still one day seems fast.
Yes. But of course, as he's saying all this, we see her hands start to move. She's okay. She gets to live, presumably because the curse of her coming back 200 years later and taking the life force of... Because they acknowledged that 100 years ago there was like an earthquake, and there was a descendant, or her ancestor looked just like her, and the witch. So it's almost like every so often there's like a descendant who is supposed to look like her that she can take over. But because they're killing her outside, she gets to come back. So Katya gets to live happily ever after. Her and young doctor get to be together.
Yeah, she you know, they ride off into the sunset, and she asks him, hey, when we get home, do you think maybe you want to put in some overtime?
What are you referencing?
Another Resident Evil 4 reference.
Yes, I remember.
I mean, the president's daughter did want to like sleep with Leon. Like that's what she was getting at, right?
Yes, but she's the idiot teenager. Leon was the responsible adult who brushed it off and said, "No, I'm too busy flirting with Hunnigan on the comms to be messing with you, child."
Yeah. As I, you know, I'll keep making this joke, as I think I made it several times when I started playing Resident Evil 4 again. But it is just so weird to play a game where like you actually want to rescue the president's daughter.
Very good. Very good. No. Yeah, you know, it's funny. Like, I feel bad that we don't have maybe as much to say on Black Sunday as we do other movies. But honestly, the plot is such a straightforward, just kind of back and forth. Like, they're dying kind of one by one, and it's bringing the person back to life. You know, the witch is coming back. It's actually quite straightforward, and it is a short film. But what makes Black Sunday worth watching is just how gorgeous it is. It's the visuals. It's all these moments that are made purely by how beautiful it is. The performances aren't that, you know, they're not terrible or anything, but they're not particularly great.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's a very, you know, it's no, they're good, and yeah, everything is very pretty straightforward and serviceable. Like nothing is actually bad. It's just, again, like you said, what elevates it is just this very striking, beautiful visual style that just you really didn't see much of this back then. One of the things, we're recording this in October, and I've been watching a ton of movies, and one of the things I've been watching is I've been going through my old like Universal box sets and watching a lot of the Universal sequels that I've never really seen before, and I like them. They're pretty fun, but yeah, they they do look kind of cheesy a lot of the times. They look very stagey.
A lot of static shots.
Yeah. And then this though, it just feels like, and again, this is a little later than that. Like that stuff is 30s and 40s, but so obviously it's a good time later, but still it feels very ahead of its time with just really how gorgeous and striking it looks. And again, if you like a lot of this very dark gothic kind of stuff, this is like kind of right up your alley.
Yeah, no, it's hauntingly beautiful, and I would recommend it. And it is so short that it is an easy one to recommend and watch, even if you don't get enthralled by the story. I think it's still well worth your time, and and the story is so forgettable that every time, like if I watch it again in a couple of years, I'm probably going to have forgotten it, and it'll be like watch it for the first time again.
Yeah, and again, it's like not like, I mean, you kind of said this already, but it's not like it's necessarily bad. Like there's nothing about it that is like, oh, that was so stupid. Like I mean, if anything, maybe it's a little amusing that they're doing a lot of vampire stuff but not really saying it.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's not bad though. Like it is good. It's just very kind of boilerplate for I guess maybe what you would expect from this. But I do like the stabbing in the eye thing. It does feel like kind of like one of those weird like mistranslations, like like oh yeah, well I don't know, hey, maybe Italian vampires, maybe you gotta stab them through the eye instead of the heart. But
yeah, maybe. Maybe. So we'll definitely look at more Bava at some point in the future. I think it's one of those aspects we can sort of dive into. It's funny because we're actually going to have a vampire themed month, which originally was going to be November, but will now be January, because obviously December is going to be Christmas themed for the most part. So look forward to some proper vampire movies over the month of January. We got some biggies in there, so it should be some exciting stuff. But as it is, you have this quasi vampire movie, but it's very beautiful. So I guess we're going to rate it. So Tim, what are you going to give Black Sunday, aka The Mask of Satan?
I'll give it an 8. Yeah, I mean it's really good. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. Again, a lot of that is coming to the cinematography. But I mean, hey, that's what 60 years ago, and still holds up and is really impressive by today's standards. And yeah, it's again, there's nothing else about it that's necessarily wrong, but it's yeah, that's definitely is the high point of it, is the look of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 7.5. I can't quite call it great because I do think the story's just kind of okay. It's fine,
Yeah.
So I can't quite call it great, which is typically what I'd say 8 and above represents. But it does have exceptional visuals, and it's definitely well worth watching. Absolutely. So that is Black Sunday, aka The Mask of Satan. The Mask of Satan is actually the original title, but I think Black Sunday is just the more accepted one because it sounds better.
Yeah, and it has like a very very cool looking poster too. Like it's very orange with this kind of the witch's face on it. But like I think even before I'd seen this movie, I'd recognize that poster, which I'd seen saying Black Sunday on it. But yeah, I do like Mask of Satan. That is a good title.
Honestly, the Italian poster's quite good too. I'm looking at it right now on IMDb. Okay. It's actually the executioner like sort of going to place the mask on, or it's like a painted poster.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
Cool. La Maschera del Demonio.
Ooh.
Or Demonio. It's obviously that's clearly Satan in Italian, but whatever.
Clearly.
Clearly. Don't you backtalk me. How dare you? But there you go, that's Mask of Satan. If you made it this far in the review, put the word vampire into the comments. But you can, of course, check out Tim's pose for the thumbnail, which we're going to do in 3, 2, 1.
I mess up my hair. All right.
Pose. I don't think Tim realizes how much harder it is to cut around his head when he's got shaggy hair.
I was trying to mimic the poster as well.
Okay. So yes, of course, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Please do. You can like and subscribe. Like is super important, like I said, as is patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. All valid ways to support us. Also leave us a rating, 5 stars, and a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. That's always good. Of course, catch us on the Twitters at Streams Midnight for updates and funny stuff. And even when Tim's on paternity leave, I imagine he's probably going to drop some stupid things on there. It seems like the sort of thing he'll do. So that is the show. That's Screams After Midnight. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.